Chez nous, on a mis un prix sur la pollution.
At home, we've put a price on pollution. We've defended it in front of the Supreme Court, even created a consensus with Canadians to go through the tarification of carbon. We've had some record investments in collective transport and clean energies. We did a lot of partnership with the indigenous people across the country, with the provinces, protect our oceans, our lands, and our biodiversity.
We're going to keep moving forward at home. On emissions, we've committed to put a cap and begin to cut emissions from oil and gas production. We're the first major oil and gas producing nation to do that. We committed to reduce methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030, and in particular, reduce oil and gas methane emissions by 75% by 2030. On electricity, we've committed to phasing out coal-fired electricity by 2030. We're going to ensure that all new vehicle sales are zero-emission vehicles and that we have a net zero grid by 2035. This is something we've said a number of times, and people have remarked upon here at COP, that we're not just saying we need to move forward as a world, we ought to do things. Canada is showing that we are doing things. We're making big decisions at home and encouraging people around the world to do more as well. Because climate change doesn't recognize borders. At COP, I've spoken to dozens and dozens of leaders driving ambition, deepening cooperation. Today, with partners like the IMF, World Bank, and the World Trade Organization, we're calling to bringing in carbon pricing to triple it on emissions, up from about 21% of emissions covered by a price on pollution around the world to get to 60% covered by a price on pollution by 2030. We're working with Germany and other partners on reaching that $100 billion a year commitment that was made at Paris that is as yet unfulfilled. We're getting close. There's still more work to do that Stephen and others are going to keep pushing on over the coming days. Notre planète est à un moment critique.
Our planet is at a critical moment. Progress of the last few days that we've seen at the G20, that we've seen at the COP with engagements of different leaders of governments. It's a good start, but it's only a start. And people across the planet are looking at us. And indigenous people are requiring even more leadership of the leaders of the world and across this planet. And this is exactly what Canada is concentrating on. Our future, the one of our kids, is at stake.
We've been past 5 days extremely busy for our Canadian delegation. From our first stop in the Netherlands, where we talked about trade and shared values, and the work we need to continue to do with strong allies on multilateralism and promoting democracy, to the G20 in Italy, where we brought the world together to recognize 1.5 as a target, to commit to reaching net zero by the middle of the century. These are things that we're going to have to continue to push on. It involved working on vaccines and global supply chains and economic growth, and strengthening our support for people who are struggling with affordability at the same time as we show leadership on the big issues that the world is facing. So from climate action to vaccines to progressive trade, we've focused on what matters to Canadians: clean air and good jobs, beating COVID-19, and doing our part to build a stronger, healthier world. It's been a busy number of days, but Canada has been there to do the hard work and to continue doing the hard work over the coming days to build a better future, not just for Canadians, but for everyone. C'est le travail que nous devons faire, c'est le travail que nous allons faire.
It's the work we'll do.
Merci.
Thank you.
Premier ministre, on va commencer la période de questions pour 20 minutes. Une question, un suivi. One question, one follow-up.
starting with David Cochran from CBC News.
Hi there, Prime Minister. I wanted to touch on your session this morning on pushing for a global minimum price on carbon. You had like-minded allies there from Europe, multilateral organizations who are clearly supportive of this, but missing biggest traded partner, biggest economy, the United States. A national carbon pricing plan is not part of what Joe Biden is proposing. So how big of an obstacle is that to achieving this goal?
I think we all recognize that the biggest obstacle is figuring out how we're all going to live up to our commitments to arrive at net zero emissions by 2050, how we're going to meet our 2030 targets. And we know there are many different approaches that every country is going to have to take to reduce emissions, to decarbonize their economy, to get to net zero. And carbon pricing is one of the most effective and cheapest ways to get there. Economists know that it's one of the most efficient ways of doing it, and it's an extremely powerful tool that incentivizes businesses and consumers to make smarter choices. Making sure that pollution isn't free anywhere is a very smart and powerful idea. Now, countries are beginning to see that what we've done in Canada and what has been done elsewhere is extremely powerful for reducing emissions. And we're excited about the interest that international organizations and other countries are looking at what we've done with. So there's lots of work to do, but the important thing is reducing those emissions. And I am very optimistic that as people look at the hard work of reducing emissions, they'll realize that not putting a price on pollution in their jurisdictions is going to mean having to do more expensively, in more complex ways in other parts of their economy. And that's what's so appealing about carbon pricing.